Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about transfer of your box squat to your back squat and how to assess what you're doing on the box squat to see how it's going to carry over. Because you'll see some people who will say, I back squat 50 or 100 pounds more than my box squat. And there are literally power lifters who do that in competition. There are guys who are even raw guys who say, they do 500 on a box and they can walk in and hit 550 at a meet raw with no reps. Okay, there are guys out there like that. Some of the guys out there, some of the best coaches actually have it at closer to 15% difference. All right, I want people to understand that. There are coaches out there whose lifters max squat on a box. When they take it to comp, they're 15% heavier raw without the box. See other people who they box squat, and what happens? They can't even hit their box squat number. So what's going on there? Well, what you need to assess is what's going on both the eccentric, the depth of the box, and then the concentric rep. And the biggest problem we have is, number one, people rocking the box. And number two, how much can they control the eccentric? And that's come up too when I've discussed explosiveness on the box squat. I've seen some people say, well, slow controlled eccentric isn't going to help athletes get explosive. Sure it is, it's fine. Because if they're exploding the rate of force production, even if you set on the box for 5 or 6 seconds straight, the rate of force production is still higher on the box squat. You're removing the stretch reflex. And just because we remove the stretch reflex doesn't mean that we don't get explosiveness. In fact, you're having to overcome a dead stop. So what we need to look at is what's going on, first of all, on when you come down. And one of the things that you need to be able to do, and this tells you a lot, when you go to a deeper box, like in my case, I'm on a 12-inch box, and I've shown you guys a close-up side shot so that people do realize, for me, this box is up to 3 inches below parallel for me personally. And you can see it pretty good right there if you look at the crease in my hip versus my knee on those speed squats. And you'll notice in that earlier max, I'm not sitting back quite as far as I am now in this newer footage, because people need to understand these are all sometimes weeks and weeks apart. And some of this footage you're looking at might be 2 weeks old by the time I video it. It might be 3 weeks or 4 weeks old by the time it hits the internet. So I've been even working on adjusting some of this because I need to make sure that eventually I can back squat more than my box squat. So what you need to look at is we sit back. That's what the box gives us the advantage of, the ability to sit further back. That's one of the big perks of it. But by sit further back, we don't mean the torso coming back, because that invariably leads to rocking. And again, that'll be the exact example of a person who, when they take the box out, they can't do as much. And we'll get to rocking in a minute. But the sit back is about the hips and the glutes coming back, not the torso. Not the torso. Your torso position should not move. But when you sit back and you can do it controlled, it shows that you have the eccentric strength to lower it under control. So if you put 400 or 450 or 500 or whatever it is, even if it's 300, on the box squat, and you go to sit back and you crash into the box, what happens? Well, I can tell you right now, you're not going to be able to squat that weight. Okay? And that's what we need to make clear, the difference. If you cannot lower a weight, a specific weight under control to the box, then guess what? When you pull that box out, you're going to miss that rep. There's a pretty good chance that that 400 that you plop onto the box with without control, when you don't have the box there, you're sticking to the bottom and you're not coming back up. And it should make sense. And that's the case of the person who is usually, the person who plops onto the box usually has to rock the box to get the weight started again. You do not have the control to control that weight on the descent. So you're certainly not going to make it pop out of the bottom. I can tell you what's going to happen. The person who plops onto the box with any given weight, and they don't practice the control, number one, you're risking injury. Like when people say box squats are dangerous, it's the person who plops on the box. That is 100% of the risk of the box squat. That is the only element of it that is not superior to risk prevention to, say, a normal back squat. It's plopping onto the box. Okay, that's what compresses the spine. It's dangerous and it won't carry over. And it's not to say you're not getting stronger, and I want people to understand that. Strength is strength. But what we're talking about is, can a person who does a box squat with 400 back squat 400 or more? Doesn't mean they haven't gained strength, even if they're doing it incorrectly from what I'm saying. Just that they better not expect to lift that much weight when they pull the box out. So hopefully people understand the difference. We're not saying you don't get stronger, because strength is strength. If you get stronger, if you add 200 pounds to a garbage technique lift, you're still going to be stronger, right? You're still going to be stronger at other stuff. But when we're plopping down onto the box, it's a lack of control. You're not going to be able to handle that weight without the box. Okay? So we need a controlled descent. And then when you sit onto the box, you're still unloading the weight. You want to fully break up the chain. So if you guys notice, even on that speed work there, I unload the weight. I'm letting the box take my weight of me in the bar, but I'm easing into it. I'm sitting back into it while maintaining tightness. In other words, your entire torso has to remain very, very tight. In other words, if the box wasn't there, it would turn into a really far sitting back pause squat. And you need to be able to practice that control, so that when you get to your maxes on this stuff, you have to maintain that same control. You need to be able to control it with minimal torso movement when you get on the box. And then with minimal torso movement, you need to be able to drive it back up. Okay? And ideally, if you want your back squat to be heavier, in other words, if you want to be able to squat more when you pull the box out than what you do with the box, because the boxing should be harder, right? The box should be harder. You should not be able to hit your back squat max on a box. Number one, you need to make sure it's deeper than parallel. And in my case, I run it about 3 inches below. Okay? Crease in the hip 3 inches below the knee for me. And that's on a 12-inch box. You need to make sure that you can maintain complete tightness, that you sit all the way back with control on the eccentric. In other words, you have to have complete control of the weight the last couple inches before you make contact with the box, so that you're essentially holding some of it isometrically as you sit back into it. Because if you can do that, if you can hold a weight isometrically, you can use a stretch reflex instead to push a slightly heavier weight. But essentially, it needs to be in a situation to where if the box had been pulled out, you'd still just sit back and be able to hold it there for a 1 count. But what we are doing is we're not pausing. We are letting the box take the weight, and then we explode up. But when you explode up, if you rock forward, and that's our natural tendency, because we sit back, and because box squats are very difficult, they're extremely difficult, and because most people want to put more weight on than they really can do on the box squat sometimes, particularly if they're too high on the box. It's that tendency that we want to swing our body forward. So we want to sit, we end up having our torso shift way back, move 6 inches, 8 inches. And this is stuff I have to deal with clients all the time. And then we swing our body forward to get the weight started again, because there is no inertia. It's basically like it's a deadlift, but as a squat. The box squat is essentially a deadlift in a squat form, because you're having to come from that stop and drive it up. So it's our natural tendency to want to let our body come back 6 inches or 8 inches, or in some cases, some people swing back an entire foot and then swing that body forward and stand back up. Okay, that's called rocking the box. And what's going to happen if you're rocking the box, the more you rock it, the more your back squat max is going to be lighter and lighter than what you just did on the box squat. And I don't have an exact conversion of every inch of rock of how many pounds it takes off, but it's going to be substantial. In other words, if you have 6 inches of torso movement once you sit onto the box, and you make contact with the box, if you have something like 6 inches of backward torso travel and then the torso coming back forward to overcome the inertia to get you started, you are absolutely not going to be able to squat that exact weight. So if you do that with 400 pounds, when you put 400 pounds on a barbell, you're going to get stapled if you don't have a box there. You're not coming out of the bottom because you're having to overcome it with that inertia. You need to be able to squat down onto it, let the box take the weight. We break up the eccentric concentric chain, but you have to use the hips and the posterior chain to get the weight started, which means the torso needs to have, if possible, we need to work on having zero movement. It takes practice. It takes getting your ego in check. But it is what you have to do if you want your back squat to equal or surpass the box squat. All right, guys, so that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.